Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special day over here at the Maskell household, a very special day for the Rogue Health Economist, and hopefully a very special day for you if you're watching this. This is sort of a moment that I've envisioned for actually almost about a year now, and super excited to be here with you today. So for those of you who've been following along, my name is James Maskell. I've been involved in the transformation of healthcare through functional medicine for the last 10 years, or actually more like 15 years. And what I'm here today to share with you is a really exciting next step in my work, a new project that I've been working on, almost full time since January. But actually, the idea had come to me last year. It took a while to get all the pieces in place to be here. But if you enjoy what you're hearing, please share this message out with your community, because I want to tell you about something super exciting that we've been working on called Find Functional. And this project has a long sort of history to it of why we've come to it, and I want to share a little bit about that history. So when I first started working in natural health in 2005, I worked in a clinic, and then I moved to America. I worked in a clinic, and I moved up to the Northeast. I lived in Connecticut for a couple of years, and then I moved to New York. And when I moved to New York, I started to meet groups of people who were not involved with natural health at all, didn't know anything about it. And some of them had strange health complaints, right? Where they had things that were going on, and they kind of knew that I was involved in some sort of alternative medicine. And so they were interested in what I was up to. And they were like, hey, I've heard about this. And I would talk to them about different ideas, like getting to the root cause. I would talk to them about, holistic viewpoint. I was thinking about the difference between systems and function. And I was starting to go to conferences, and I get, pretty, start to learn these kind of things. And that was a moment that people would start to ask me, hey, who shall I go and see? Right? Which is the obvious question that people would start to ask me, because I'm involved in this world. And the number of people who have asked me which practitioner that I should see has been in the thousands over the last decade. And so at the beginning, my strategy was to send everyone to just the best doctor. And in New York, my understanding of who the best functional medicine doctor was at that time was Jeff Morrison. And I'd be like, Jeff Morrison, he's the man. He's reversing Lyme disease. He's got this amazing practice. It's beautiful. He was a customer of mine where I was working, and I was like, go and see Jeff Morrison. And I would send people to Jeff Morrison, and, I would start to get feedback. And, I would also send to other people in other parts of the country. And for some people, having a relationship with a doctor that listened to them, that understood their condition, that would really help to think, look, they're not crazy, these kind of things. That was an amazing moment for so many people to really understand, right? There was some sort of journey. One of the biggest things that I found that people are frustrated with medicine is that the doctor can't tell them why they became this way. Right? How did you become sick? What happened in what order? One day you were okay, you had a few symptoms, and one day you've been diagnosed with lupus. What happened in that meantime? And going to a functional medicine doctor can be a huge eye-opener for people, because you start to really understand this timeline. What did your parents and grandparents do, and how did that affect your health? Then how were you birthed? Were you C-section? Did you come, through a normal birth? Then, from there, how many courses of antibiotics did you have before you were 6? And then, tell us about some symptoms that came up in childhood, and going through that whole process of self-discovery and learning your history and learning where you came from and understanding your experience from a different point of view, has been hugely valuable to so many people, right? That journey is really incredible. But for some people, they didn't have that experience at all. They experienced that this was really expensive. Why doesn't health insurance pay for this thing? Why is this guy trying to sell me supplements? Why is, there was all these issues coming up where people, felt like that there was something wrong with this process. And it was a mixed bag. And that was with the same practitioner. right? And then never mind now, this is happening now over the last 10 years, like a lot more people have asked me about practitioners from all over the country because we built the biggest, practitioner, conference with meetup groups across the country. And I drove this crazy bus across the country for 2 years and went to all these meetup groups. And I've been to hundreds of health conferences and functional medicine conferences. I met all these doctors, and, we started the Functional Forum in New York. So tons of people ask me like, hey, who shall I go and see? And taking a step back, for some people, it's an amazing experience. They're like, thank you, James. And then for some people, it's kind of like, what was that? Like, why are you sending me to this doctor that, is trying to sell me supplements, or these lab tests aren't covered by insurance, or, they made me pay for a bunch of care up front. Like there was no expectation management system on the front, right? And that's what I started to see, is that people have mismatched expectations with the doctor. And I started to feel a little bit like scared to make recommendations to doctors, because I didn't know, like, would these be one of the people that had a great experience, or would these be one of the people that had like an iffy experience? So then I'm starting to work now with my business partner, Gabe Hoffman, who is a health coach. And he had worked as a health coach in a doctor's office in Long Island. And then he had actually started working in a center in New York. And, as I started to explaining this to him, and sharing that experience, he could really recognize it. And what we came to recognize was that, one, for something so new, like a really new experience, like going to a functional medicine doctor, like this is new for people. And therefore, there are some expectations that need to be communicated ahead of time as to what you're getting into. But also we started to think, was sending people to the best practitioner, was that the most important thing? Because some people only had a little bit of money. And we started to think about, like, how can we get the most people the most well for the least amount of money? And that wasn't investing in a $700 first appointment, because Gabe in his clinic would really work with people on the things that he saw that was really important, which is everyone has a list. Everyone has a list of the 10 things that destroy their health that they're still doing because they like doing them. So maybe it's drinking diet soda. Maybe it's watching lots of TV. Maybe it's not sleeping, 8 hours a night. Maybe it's being really stressed and not taking care of that. Like, it. If you're watching this, you know it, and I know it, and everyone knows it, that we're not all operating at the healthiest of our potential. And we have a combination of bad habits and other things that we do because, we like doing it. And so what Gabe said is, when he would work with patients, what people really needed, what most people really needed, right? Not the super chronically ill, I've been to every doctor, I've got Lyme, mold, SIRS, and heavy metal toxicity. No, not those people. But your average person on the street, right, they need accountability, right? It's nice for them to be heard, but they basically need accountability. They need someone to take them through these destructive behaviors and kind of like get into a little bit of them. Like, why are you still doing this? And, do you need some help? And how can I help you overcome them? And what are some little changes you can make? And, what are some switches that you can do from unhealthy things to healthy things? And that kind of thing. And ultimately, we started to realize that maybe it was better for me to send everyone to Gabe first, because his first appointment was $150, not $750. And ultimately, most people needed that sort of like accountability, friendship, guidance, advocacy, support, not like the full functional medicine workup. And look, it's nothing against functional medicine doctors, because they're doing amazing work. And if you put yourself in the mind of a functional medicine doctor for a minute, if all you're seeing all day is the most unhealthy people, like the sickest of the sick, come through your doors, of course you're going to start to set up your practice like, okay, anyone who comes in, we're putting them through all the tests. They're going to do the lab test, they're going to do the stool test, they're going to do the genetic test, because you want to get to uncover the root cause as quickly as possible. So I don't blame functional medicine doctors for that, because ultimately it's just reflecting to their own environment. Like, if you start getting a lot of the tiny, percentage of 1% of the sickest people out there, which is what functional medicine is, you really don't, you build your practice around that. And so what we want to see is like, if we wanted to help people get value for money, let's first send them to, you know, a much lower cost provider where you can really get into accountability and behavior change. And then if and only if you don't get better from that, which most people did, then we can send them for the deeper diagnostic testing, and we can send them for all of those things. And that's how we ran it for a couple of years. And this became the thinking that became the Functional Forum, and became the Evolution of Medicine, and became New Health, all the things that Gabe and I started together. And so, you know, ultimately last year, when it became clear that New Health was moving in the direction of being like sort of different from my original vision, and being like an insurance alternative, what we started to see is that like I wanted a place where I could send people where expectations would be managed, and where there would be a structure of helping people get the most healthy for the minimum possible cost. And I didn't see that anywhere. Like I didn't see that created. And I would see actually in some of the online groups that I'm on, like people saying, okay, who's the best doctor in, you know, I want someone who is in Atlanta, who is a hormone specialist, who takes my insurance and knows about Lyme disease. And I was like, oh my God, that is like an unbelievably specific ask, right? But you would get these kind of things. And I would be in groups where people say, hey, who's the best functional medicine doctor in Wisconsin? Who's the doctor who I should see? My friend needs to see one in Dallas. And I would, you know, I would field these calls because like I've been to all these places and I've been to all these conferences, and I know doctors who do great work. But have those doctors got an expectation management system in place, right? Have they got a health coach on staff? Are they running group visits? And then most importantly today is, do they have telemedicine, right? Are they actually open for business? Because a lot of functional medicine clinics today are not even open because, you know, most of primary care is out of business. We spoke about that last week. And so, you know, a lot of functional medicine practices, especially if you had like high overhead and a lot of staff, you know, you couldn't transition to telemedicine quickly enough to keep the doors open. So you're out of business today. And so, you know, before COVID went down, I was like, we need to build an expectation management system. Like I want to build somewhere where if I say, hey, go and use this service, we will use a combination of vetted functional medicine doctors, health coaches, and information delivery in a way that gets the most people the most well for the minimum amount of money. Like I want that. I want a service that I can send my friends to, knowing that no one's going to overspend, right? No one's going to be forced to get $1,000 of lab testing before they've even been told like, hey, you know, you're not sleeping more than 4 hours a day. Like, I think that's a problem. And I think maybe just try going to bed every day at 9 o'clock for a week and see what happens, and see if your health changes. You know, those kind of things. Like I wanted someone who would hold people accountable to lifestyle, right? The fundamentals. And also what I've seen, the best practices in functional medicine put the lifestyle first, because you know, if you're a doctor, that if you take someone who's doing none of the healthy behaviors and you have them over a period of time start to do the healthy behaviors, eat an anti-inflammatory diet, exercise and move regularly, sleep properly, deal with their stress, and have good relationships. If people do those 5 things, their lab test, their physiology, and therefore their lab test changes dramatically, right? And so is it really worth doing the $500 gut test on your first appointment if you do these healthy behaviors for a month, you may look completely different, and it might, you know, change what numbers come up there. And so ultimately, you know, I wanted to create something where I could send people to where I'd know that there was met expectations and where people could get the most healthy for the least amount of money. And that became a concept called Find Functional. And it's available today at findfunctional.com. Today is the launch. It's Cinco de Mayo. And I'm super excited to say that any of you who are listening to this right now, you can go to findfunctional.com. You can download one of the ebooks that I wrote. You can get a code from that email that we'll send you that will give you 50% off. And you can get started with functional medicine today for less than a copay.